Ndị Igbo ekene m unu, ndị Naijiria ekene m unu. Ebe ọ bụ na isi ekiri ihe onyonyo a, ekene gị, biko onye chi ya zere. Ọ kara ịmasị m ka m nkọwa ihe a n'onu Igbo, n'asụsụ Igbo, kama ndị ga-egie awụrụ sọsọ ndị Igbo. Ya mee mmeji asụsụ Igbo na asụsụ Bekee wee kọwaa ya. My name is John Kelechi Ugwuanyi. I teach in University of Nigeria. I'm going to speak on the topic, Are Igbo forests no one's land? Igbo settlement, heritage, and the Fulani herders' occupation of forests. Recently, I was developing a manuscript around heritage and indigeneity in Igbo land. Indigeneity means quality of being indigenous. When I got the invitation for the 2021 IgboConference on the theme, A New Dawn, Rebirth, Renewal, Regeneration, I felt that this is the appropriate forum to present this idea. I appreciate the organizers of IgboConference. It has become a very good platform to discuss Igbo history and knowledge systems. In this presentation, I will use Igbo heritage to explain the processes that formed independent Igbo villages and towns. I extend the discussion to include the ways in which land, heritage, and indigeneity are entangled in Igbo life and history. I draw from these narratives to interrogate the current occupation of Igbo forests by the Fulani herders in a manner that presents those forests as a no one's land. I rely on Francis Nyamjo's flexible indigeneity to argue that migrations and settlement, especially in this 21st century, does not support the coerced or conquest-oriented approach that the Fulani herders apply in their migration and attempt to settle in Igbo land. I conclude that Igbo indigeneity would allow migrants wanting to settle through what I refer to in this presentation as consensus indigeneity. By consensus indigeneity, I mean a situation where the migrants would acknowledge in form of paying rent or homage that the land they are about to occupy belong to a people. Indigeneity is what makes one a member of a cultural group that originated from the land they occupy before the arrival of other cultural group or cultural groups. The concept of no one's land is the direct meaning of the word terra nullius. The history of the concept of terra nullius, which could also mean land without owners, is associated with the European colonization, especially in the settler colonies like America, Australia, New Zealand, and some countries in Africa, like Zimbabwe, that's the former Rhodesia, and South Africa. Even though historians argue that the concept of terra nullius was never mentioned during the 18th and 19th century European colonization, reference is made to the adoption of a similar concept, res nullius, found in the Roman legal vocabulary that can also translate to things without owners. Whichever side one looks at it, the argument put forward by some persons to support Fulani herders is that all Nigerians have equal right to settle anywhere in Nigeria. That is true, but many people like myself think that it should be done within the laws of the Federation of Nigeria that recognizes customary rights of land occupancy. This means that it requires the prior agreement with the customary owners of the land for one to settle. But the Fulani herders' conquest approach to settle in forests in Igbo land and other parts of Nigeria where they have not secured initial customary ownership or approval from the first settlers present those forests as terra nullius, that is, no one's land. This is a new dawn in Igbo history. Are Igbo forests really no one's land? Are Igbo forests land without owners? I would like to take us into the deep histories of migration and settlement of people in some parts of Igbo land. I will use the historical narratives of 7 Igbo communities in northern Igbo land, Nsukka cultural area to be precise. Nsukka region is made up of 7 local government areas in Enugu state. Before going into the histories, I would like to give us a picture of what a village settlement means in Igbo life and history. A village is locally called obodo or mkporo, but mkporo could also mean town in some places in Igbo land. So Igbo people live in independent villages and towns. By town, I mean a cluster of independent villages that share descent or common cultural interests. In one of the publications I co-authored in 2018, we defined a village in Igbo understanding as a group of people, that is families or lineages, that trace descent to one or more ancestors who lived in their current location or to more distant towns or villages from where they emigrated. There are some exceptions, like settlers that were adopted into some of such ancestry on the basis of their good relationship with the earliest settlers, or because they possessed a useful skill or craft with which they explored nature. That is, in this case, I'm referring to smelters, blacksmiths, wood carvers, locally people that has local knowledge of agriculture and so on. These people maintain quasi-independence, but pay allegiance to their host. Where such earliest settlers are found, they claim to have sprouted from the soil. I'm referring to the autochthonous people, those that could be referred to as aboriginals. They have no migration history, so they never migrated to or from anywhere. They are usually referred to as autochthons. Every independent Igbo village or confederacy, by confederacy I'm referring to group of towns or group of villages or group of towns that have a definite boundary with their neighbors and will fight wars with them if they attempt to encroach into their land without prior agreement. Such boundaries are more than physical. Cosmologically, it extends to the imaginary demarcation guided by the establishment of Iru, Ihu, or Ifu, or Onuala, which could mean the face of the earth, the beginning of the earth, or the altar of the earth goddess. Based on this understanding, each independent village refers to the earth as their own. This is not a physical division. It is a cosmic demarcation of the territorial features of the earth and the species that relate to the Igbo, to the people in the community of life. I mean the territoriality, belongingness, and mutuality that bring together the earth contents into a united life. For instance, in some villages where I visited, each independent village has Onwal. And when they want to refer to the rites pertaining to the earth goddess, they will say, Onwal Ikem, Onwal Ako, Onwal Harmona, as if the face of the earth or the beginning of the earth began from those places. So this is an imaginary demarcation. So this explains how Allah connects people, land, and heritage. To the Igbo, Allah is an entanglement of all things that exist. It is the mother of all things. In the past, most Igbo villages performed the annual Igbo rite, during which some ritual travels are made round to the boundaries and major entrances into the village. So through this rite, young people and even elderly continue to reenact their knowledge of the boundaries and map of their locality without having them in a cartographic manner, but in their memory. Significantly, the people know where their land stopped and where their neighbors' land began. This explains Igbo indigeneity rooted in the connection they have with the land. Now, how does it relate to Francis Nyamjo's flexible indigeneity? Or how is my idea of consensus indigeneity explained in Igbo life and history? I have presented in another of my publications last year that in the past, there are 4 factors that defines a group's membership of an Igbo village. 1 is migration, 2 is birth, 3 is innovation, and the 4th one is war strength. By migration, emphasis is on the first to arrive to settle on the land. By birth, focus is on the ancestors born in the land before or after others. By innovation, interest is on the person or group of persons that founded or brought a particular skill, knowledge, or practice. And by war strength, focus is on who led the war that brought the people to the land, or who helped in conquering the enemies along their migration routes, or those that troubled them in their place of settlement. These factors shape how Igbo people understand indigeneity. It confers on a particular group the right to control a particular heritage, place, or practice. Because of time, I will use 4 case studies instead of 7 to further explain the points I am making here. I will give the migration and settlement histories of 2 autochthonous villages of Ebo Ehalmona and Amo Uhunowere in Nsukka and Igbo South local government areas respectively, and 2 villages with migration histories, Useako and Ogikem in Igbo Etiti and Isuzo local government areas respectively, all in Enugu State. It is important to note that all the narratives and histories I will render here are events that took place in the deep past. By deep past, I'm referring to at least 2,000 years before Christ, which is the oldest date for so far produced by archaeologists, as evidenced in the people's cultural material. And many of such practices that produced them are still surviving among the people today. So, such migration and patterns of settlement predate modernity that came with the cartographic creation of boundaries and maps. So it has been a memory-oriented practice that the people will continue to reenact their boundaries and their map based on their knowledge of the landscape and their relationship with the land. Ebo is, for the examples I'm going to take are 4. The first is Ebo. Ebo is a village in Ehalmona town that claimed to be autochthonous as against all other villages. Because of their position in the past, Oha Ehalmona, that is Council of Elders of Ehalmona, held meetings in their village arena, locally called Otobo. In any gathering in Ehalmona, the eldest man from Ebo takes the first pieces of orji, that's kola nut, before others. It doesn't matter if people from other villages are older than him. Noting the importance of orji in Igbo land, he will perform the Igbo orji rite, that is prayers, that's using kola nut to pray. Ebo sends pieces of nzo beyond its boundaries to announce the Igbo New Year. Ebo received all the people that made up the 3/4 of Ehalmona, locally called Nkpunato. Nkpunato means Nkpureto. So Nkpur is town, remember. Meanwhile, the people of Umugu, who are blacksmiths, is part of Ebo village. They were accepted into the Ebo village ancestry because of their blacksmithing skills. Coming with the blacksmithing skills at a time that agriculture was the only means of survival placed the people in control of agriculture. Although in consultation with the Onyishi, that's the eldest person, the leader of Ebo village. They also control smithing technology. Umugu also controls the rites that relates to the smithing. Annually, every lineage in Ebo take part in what is in a rite or what festival that is called Ekaral Harmona. Ekaral means land boundary. In the past, all Ehalmona children will return home to celebrate in their various families and villages. After the feast, the elders would take young ones to show them family lands, necessary features and boundaries. This process of learning the one's land boundaries is an ancient rite that have moved from past generation to the present generation, even though it is not being practiced at the moment. But the memory is there and are being passed from children to children. I can remember when my own father was taking us around our lands to show us our family boundaries. So by doing that, every land belonging to the village is known to the people. So also in Ehalmona, there are some villages that has small land. But because of their population increase, they approached other villages that has large lands, large parcels of land, to give them a place to settle in return for what is locally called Ihuta. Ihuta is a homage that settlers pay to their landlord, which involved giving some gallons of palm oil and some tubers of yam annually, which current generation pay money in place of the goods exchange. Extending this conversation to another town in another village in Ako, Use people claim to be the first people to migrate to settle on the land. Today, Ako is made up of about 66 villages. Their position confers on them, that's the Use position confers on them the status of Onyishi Ako, the ruler, the oldest, the leader of Ako town. That's the leader of the 66 villages. And Onyishi Ozo. Ozo, as we know, is very important in Igbo history and politics. So being the head of Ozo means that they occupy a very important place in the political structure of Ako town. There are also the Atamoji and Ahurumak deities. These are deities that played important roles in their life and history. They are also the priest of Onual, that is the shrine of the earth goddess. So there is a claim that Use people migrated from Nrobo, a town in the present Uzuwani local government, also in Enugu state. This claim is justified with the popular saying, Ukene Nrobo, which could translate to Use in Nrobo. But the people reject this claim and interpret the saying to mean Use, the mother of Nrobo, because Ne also means mother. However, the Noa village in Ako heads the institution of the renowned Odo spirit being in the entire Ako because the ancestor brought the spirit of Odo into the town. I prefer to use the term spirit being because it represents what the ontological meaning of masquerade in Igbo land. Masquerade incarnate the ancestor, so it has a spiritual dimension than just performance. So Use and Umudiku people manage and calculate the Igbo calendar for Ako town. So Umudiku is a lineage in Noah from whose ancestors the knowledge of Odo spirit being came. So both towns manage the calendar, and in the historical version of Ako that linked the origin of some quarters to one Njija from Nshe, that is the current Nri in Anambra state, who married Odobo, the daughter of Ata Igala. Ezike, a renowned farmer that Ata the king assigned to serve his daughter, brought to Ako the agricultural knowledge. Ezike founded the Umuezike Ako, that heads the rights of Shuajoku. Shuajoku is the god of agriculture. So Umuezike village are in charge of Shuajoku because their ancestor brought the knowledge of agriculture. Many other villages settled in Ako following one migration story or the other. What is important for us is that the Igbo welcomed migrants to settle with them in the ancient time, provided they are within the 4 factors I have mentioned earlier. In Ikem, another town, Ogo village is the only Ikem town. No matter the age of anyone in other larger village, that is, there are about how many of them? 1, 2, 3. So we have the Ebia, Amudam, Umuaram, Ikemunkwo, and Umuagbato. So Ikem is the eldest, the oldest among them. Even if a man from Ikem is the youngest among others, he will have to take kolanut before every other person in Ikem. Ogo people assume this position because Agbundru, who is their brother, founded the land for them, for the entire Ikem people. With this singular act, Agbundru secured the position of Onyishi Ikem for his people. Even though Ogo village is the leader of Ikem, the Onyishi Ogo cannot preside over prayers in Onwal. Remember, Onwal is important in Igbo land. That's the shrine of the earth goddess. By being in charge of Onwal, the eldest man from Ebia village, according to the narrative, Ebia people are warriors and they wielded some powers with which they defeated their enemies after settling in Ikem and even along the routes when they were coming to settle in Ikem. There is a saying among the people that Ebia biag Moganog. This means Ogo couldn't stay without the coming of Ebia. What you to note is that the goddess of Ala in Igbo cosmology is associated with procreation and survival of all living things as the mother of earth. Therefore, anyone who is in control of her affairs is in position of power, while the factor of the first arrival to land confer on Ogo village the rulership of Onyishi, strength in war or innovation positioned Ebia village as the priest of the earth goddess. The implication is that Ogo and Ebia villages must live in harmony for the healthy survival of Ikem town. Amokpu Hunowere is another town. Amokpu is a village in Hunowere town. It is the cultural, political, and religious headquarters of Uhunowere and Eketekere Confederacy. Eketekere Confederacy is made up of Uhunowere, Ihakpu, Iheka, and Uvoko towns. Important to note is that in in these areas, they have their independence, but they have confederacy, they have common cultural interest. So, but this common cultural interest is led by Amokbu village. So Amokbu, in Amokbu, there are three lineages: Umuagbo, Amozo, and Ameg. Umuagbo claim primacy as original occupants. They have prerogative rights over the management of the Igbo calendar and scheduling of all cultural festivals, both in Ihunowore and Eketekere Confederacy. Their Onishi is the priest of Allah and all other major deities. On the other hand, Amozo people are said to be itinerant blacksmiths that came from the Oka area of Anambra State to settle later. They were assimilated into the cultural system because of their smithing skill. They control the associated Uke festival. Uke is also known as Shwajoko, that's the god of agriculture. Amozu produced and continues to produce agricultural implements. They are accorded the right to observe Uke rites, that's Shwajoko rites, before other villages because of their position. And after, they must have performed the rites before other villages will start performing theirs in 4 days' time. This is because of their position, because of their skills, because of their knowledge, because of their technology. The above processes that brought people to settle in Igbo land also featured during the arrival of the British colonialists. I'm now making reference to the generality of Igbo land in relation to historical records, not just the Nsukka Igbo region, but this transcends to other parts of Igbo land. The Igbo resisted British colonization. One can remember the likes of Ekumeku and Aba Women Riot, and even some secret societies that fought to retain their land. And remember, these things happened in late 18th and late 19th and early 20th centuries. So, but when missionaries were fronted by colonialists, Igbo people began to give their sacred forests for church and colonial officers. Remember, this was because of the narrative about Jesus Christ and God being the only means to live. So people began to see it that these people might have brought a new knowledge that would be useful. So they gave sacred forests for the for setting up missionary churches and colonial offices. Let Chinua Achebe capture this narrative appropriately in his book, Things Fall Apart. I would like to draw our attention to the fact that when I visited the above villages, I mean Ogo, Amobo, Ebo, there is evidence that was in between 2006 and 2017, 2016 and 2017. There is evidence that there are Fulani people settling in both Ikem, Iharmon, and many other villages and towns around the region. They live in harmony with the people. They pay rent to the people through the traditional rulers. Sometimes they travel back to the north to return at some point. This is similar to the Ihuta system that allows one cultural group to settle in another group's land without crisis. This is consensus indigeneity. It also explains Francis Nyamjo's flexible indigeneity, in which people are free to belong and withdraw from membership of a cultural group at every point in time. But this was in the past and not in the present. A time when people had land in excess and are free to forego any parcel. Even at present, people still give their land, especially in Ikem and the Harmon, as I observed during my field visits between 2016 and 2017, that the Fulanis are settling and grazing their cattle without crisis. So in this 21st century, it would be difficult to assume that non-inhabited lands belongs to no one, or that one can use a conquest approach to acquire land. Cartography have placed every human in any part of the world on a known map, and national and international legislations have also empowered people to exact rights over the land that they currently occupy. Today, there is no pristine wilderness anywhere on Earth, except in another planet. However, understanding the ways that a cultural group configures the processes of indigeneity would help prospective settlers get crashed into being accepted to settle in a land. The world capitalist economy has also provided alternative ways of securing land. One can purchase any size of land, provided he or she or his people or a group of people have the money and have agreed with the owners. In this case, the idea of consensus indigeneity, which the Igbo practiced in the past, could help us to resolve the current crisis. The Fulanis should understand that because the knowledge of cartography have placed everybody on boundaries, apart from the idea of the local rights that taught people about their land boundaries and even the boundaries between them and their neighbors, the cartographic evidence have also placed them. So in this case, it will be difficult to assume that any land is terra nullius or that it is no one's land. So in this presentation, I feel that it is important to start this conversation and begin to educate our people on the need to understand the cultural consciousness of a people before making attempts to create crisis. When we understand this, I feel that the crisis about Fulani settlement in forests in Igbo land or other parts of Nigeria will be resolved. Thank you for inviting me to make this presentation.